What's up? What's up, guys? Hello, welcome to my channel. I am going to see if I mess with some of this video. I'll give you guys a minute to jump on. So I have a DSLR. I have a beautiful camera. See? It's gorgeous. I just had the wrong plug for it to connect here. So we're just dealing with the webcam that's attached to my, that's attached to my computer. So we're just going to deal. Okay. So, hi. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm not going to do this every single time, give you an update on who I am, but my name is Jamie Thurber, and welcome to my channel. I am a life and business coach, intentional living lifestyle expert. I help people live life on their terms, maneuver around their responsibility, not around, but maneuver through their responsibilities while meshing in things that they love and being able to actually enjoy life in the process. This is the first of many live trainings. So if you've been following along my journey, I started a coaching group. First, it was called the Get Shit Done group, and I changed the name because the interwebs don't like the word shit. And that's just what it was. So then it turned into Operation Do, which has a funny backstory. A funny backstory is because I used to always, when I'd have things going on, I didn't even realize this until years later. That's why I named it this. But I would come up with okay, I need to achieve this thing. So I would turn it into Operation XYZ, whatever it was that I was trying to accomplish or overhaul or finish. I still do it. Right now I'm working on swapping our closets. Long story, but basically my partner and I are going to have separate closets. So he can be a slob in his and I can have mine look luxurious and beautiful. But it's a big project. And so I have Operation Closet Swap. And it's all the things I need and to do and all that good stuff. So that's all there. So Operation Do is a place that I went live sometimes twice a week, but at least once a week and taught a training. And I had this realization a while ago that there's just such a depth to what I teach and how I teach as a coach and how I work with people as a consultant that it's difficult to put forth in writing and in, because I write blog posts almost every day, right? Hey, Kara, I write blog posts almost every day. I do a podcast every couple of weeks. We do a podcast episode, and I do my best to be able to, get out what I need to you, but sometimes it's in these trainings that it really comes out. And I realized well, first of all, the whole reason I started doing these things the way that I do them, my work and what I do, is because I wanted to give to people who needed it, people who were interested in learning, people who were interested in growth. And that really is a huge theme in my life. And as we continue this journey together every week, you'll start to see that everything from actually growing plants and food and houseplants everywhere to myself and the depth that I've been through over the years, the growth is a huge thing. It's a huge part of my life. It's a huge part of who I am. And there's just a depth to that only a small amount of people were having the ability to see or the opportunity to see because I was teaching behind closed doors only. And it just didn't feel good anymore. So here we are, publicly live. Things that you need to know about me. I do curse from time to time. So if you have little people near you or you are at work, put your headphones in. I hope that doesn't offend you. If it does, this is probably not the right place for you. And it's just natural to me. And so I choose not to change that. Other things, I'm super real. No questions are off topic. If you are watching live or you're watching the replay, I'm a fairly open book. I won't reply or acknowledge any crude comments. Apparently we just reserve those for Instagram. Just kidding. But I won't acknowledge any of that stuff. But any other questions or thoughts or comments or anything that you would like to hear me talk about as we continue through our time together every single week, you can always pop things in the comments or as you're watching the replay, same thing, right? So let me put this quiet. There we go. So those are a few things you need to know about me. And I look at life as a whole. I look at what I help my clients with as a whole, how I operate my own life. Like everything is so connected. And I think if people would recognize and accept that everything is so connected, then they could understand the pieces in the magical ability you do have to mold life into what you want it to be. Or at least get really close, right? Or at least enjoy the ride. Like that's really the point. And it's really by looking at everything holistically and everything as a whole. So years and years ago, so I'm going to like give you guys a little recap. So what I would do in the group when I was teaching behind closed doors, every week was a different area of life. So I went through mindset and motivation, health and wellness, connections, which are your relationships, business and leadership, and then we would have energy and spirituality week if we had 5 weeks in the year or in the month. Basically, with that, though, it all feeds into each other. And you'll see as we move through together that these calls and this like conversations, how everything, I always am able to show you the different parts and how everything is really combined and how it's like cute for us to think that we can separate them, but that's not possible. So I created this thing, which is not, I did not invent it out of the clear blue sky. It is my way of explaining a bunch of various forms of training that are similar to like looking at and paying attention to each area of your life. And I call it the wheel of intentional living. I have a cute little like fancy diagram that my team made for me finally after years of me just drawing it and like using my hand. But maybe I'll bring it in here one day and show you. I have it on a whiteboard, but basically it shows you how every area is connected and how we train for life, right? Like we do, and we talk about and we work in these areas because it's why we practice. It's why we do the work every day and we pay attention and we question things and we get curious. And by doing that, we're preparing ourselves and our foundation in a space that allows us to be really, really able to handle what life throws at us a lot better without being too thrown off course, which is the ultimate goal. My ultimate goal for my clients and my work and myself is always to be conditioning ourselves so much in a way that as shit hits the fan, which it will, or things happen that we, are unexpected, which they do, it doesn't throw us so far off course that we need so much time to get back from it, right? I always use an analogy about maps. So imagine you're not paying attention to the map and you veer off course a little bit. You might go into a different town, maybe even a different state, but I don't want you to go all the way into a different country, right? We want to be able to learn and create these habits and these ways of checking in to where we bring ourselves back to our path quicker without as much time veered in the opposite direction. Now, granted, we also will learn about ways that when we veer off course, we learn. We can use those lessons in that time as a constructive way of being anyways, right? So, because it all is. And so part of that journey comes from, life and from these teachings and these conversations. And so you'll see me talk about how everything's really intertwined. And so what did I name this? I think I named this something like, going with the flow and control is your comfort zone. I mean, so most people hyper control over the little things or like to have this belief that we have this control over these over every little moment. And it's a lot of that. It feels like very forceful. If you were to like stop and really think about that energy, it's a very forceful energy, which nobody likes. The universe doesn't like it. Science doesn't like it. We don't like it. Forcing is never a good thing. And it's this just ability to cling to control. And when we do that, it's because it's a sense of comfort in a lot of us, right? But what I wanted to really just like share with you today is because this is my life, like all of the time. I am like a recovering control freak. I am way drastically different than I ever was, but the tendencies still show up and I still have moments where I realize that I can cling to that. And so I found healthy ways to do it, because the truth is clinging to control was not healthy. It creates codependency. It creates blocks in different places and things like that. And so we don't really want to be clinging in those ways if we can avoid it. And so parts of the deal is really thinking about or parts of the like idea of the is really thinking about where are the places that I had false senses of security based upon what I perceived as control, right? And oh gosh, that's a really loaded question. But the biggest thing that I've learned in my life, so again, you guys, I'm gonna have to like kind of recap a lot of things because I don't want to pretend as though you know this stuff about me. Um, but I have always had issues or complications with my health, things that nobody can really just like figure out. Like nobody really knows what in the hell is going on most of the time. There's never been a diagnosis, there's never been any of that. And so it can be a struggle for me, or it has been a struggle for me, to where I would force control, especially in my early 20s when I started to really try to take control of my health and not just take what the doctors gave me as answers as like what it was. I wanted to figure it out on my own and give myself a different quality of life, which I have. But in the meantime, while doing that, I created all and established all these really like controlled factors that really created anxiety in me, which made my life more difficult long term. When I started to really go into the world of like, but I don't want to feel that way all of the time anymore. I don't want to feel that pressure all of the time anymore. So I started to identify where it was coming from. And a lot of it was coming from rules that I had set up for myself to try to prevent myself from being sick or having too much downtime or whatever, when anytime that my health would act crazy. So I do have like a whole program about this actually, which we're about to relaunch, and I'll keep you all posted about it. It's called Project Manage Your Health. It's pretty cool because the mindset around it is pretty cool. It also takes you through that whole evolution of creating discipline versus then establishing a relationship with your body where you're listening differently. Because when you're listening to someone, you're not controlling them. At least you shouldn't be, right? So if you were to be listening to learn, meaning someone's telling you a story, and instead of establishing a thought or a reason in your head about what they're saying and why before they're even done talking, or what you're going to say to them back before they're even done talking, you actually are listening to them to hear what they're saying. You're listening to learn from the words that are coming out of their mouths. If you start to practice that, you become a student, and becoming a student is what makes you a good teacher. It was what makes you a good person who's constantly growing and evolving. Comes from being a good student. And being curious, like I said, that's a big part of it. But finding the flow comes from a place of listening and learning how to listen. Because if you're listening, you're not controlling. Because if you're observing what's going on around you, you're not controlling. If you're observing your behavior, you're not controlling. This one, to give you like a really tangible example, when I teach people about planning, because productivity is like something that's extremely like my sixth sense, and I'm really good at helping people just get more shit done. Like it's definitely a thing in my world. People know that I'm a great operations manager. People pay me to run their businesses. Like it's a thing. And I dissect other people's and like figure out what's going on. But what happens when you're observing, you can't control the data that you're seeing. Because if you do, then you're not going to actually see what's really there. So that's a hydration reminder, y'all. So take a drink wherever you are. And for me, that's like, I had surgery on Tuesday. So I've been drinking these because I'm having a hard time eating because I had surgery in my mouth and it's uncomfortable. So this is why I'm drinking that. But anyway, those little reminders, I love them, but they make me lose my train of thought. Anyways, so with that being said, like if you're looking at the data and you're trying to establish like what it's telling you, you can't be trying to control what you're seeing, because then you're not actually seeing the truth of what's really happened. And that's what I like about data and observation is it can be very black and white if you allow it to be, right? It can be very black and white in the way that you can look and see, okay, this goes here and this goes here and this matches this, and like, that kind of deal. But for me, when I'm teaching, back to what I was saying, when I'm teaching somebody planning, I have them observe and go back and reflect on how their days went. Like, how did your day flow? What worked and what didn't? How did you like that? Did you like that? What didn't you have time for? If it didn't work, why didn't it work? Like those kinds of pieces of observation, because then we can tweak. And unlike what a lot of people on the internet tell you, I don't believe there's a one size fits all plan for anyone. I think that that's all horseshit. And so, because it is, the reason that like you buy all these like planning guides and none of them work for you is because everyone is so different. And your life is so different than hers and his and mine and this person's. And so utilizing the tip to observe each week and look backwards at what happened prior to tweaking what you're going to do moving forward is really like the most magical key in creating any change in your life, like big time. So in that though, you can't be controlling over what you're seeing. You have to be real with yourself and look at the data for what it is. Look at the black and white. I always tell people like you have black and white in the gray area. We want to try to stay away from the gray area because it's unknown. It's not provable. It's not exact, or it's this maybe place. We don't want to be the maybe place. We want to be in the yes place or the no place, or the good, or like, yes, this worked, this didn't, this was a fact and this wasn't a fact. Like we want to live in that place with some things, especially when we're trying to find the flow and to let ourselves feel the flow. Because what I think happens, and what I mean by flow, is when things are just happening and you do sometimes have to be reactionary, which I don't love doing. I like to try to be proactive as much as possible, but sometimes you do have to be reactionary. But then if you cling to something in those reactions, that prevents you from having those good moments. Do you see what I mean? The flow doesn't exist and you won't ever actually find it if you're clinging to what you're seeing. So the reason I'm kind of explaining the backness of this is, would you love that I make up my own words? How do you like that? The backness of this. Like, I mean, obviously you knew what I meant. It makes perfect sense, but that's not a fucking thing. People don't say that. My teeth. Oh my God, you guys. So I have stitches in my mouth. Can you see? It hurts. My tooth has moved forward a little bit and my gums are really red. I have kind of a black eye for my surgery, which is cute. I have an in-person event here in St. Louis, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And I'm like, cool. So I have a black eye. My teeth look crazy. Awesome. What can you do, right? It is what it is. But so that's what I mean by flow. That's an example, is like, you are not going to be able to control what happens all of the time. But what you can do is you can control how you react to it. So there's a couple of podcast episodes that I go deeper into some of these topics. So what I had said to you earlier was why we practice. It's a pretty badass episode, and we'll link it below, but it's like a really good episode about understanding why the day-to-day work, the day-to-day focus points are so important. But then the other piece there was like what's brought to your table. And that's really where you can't control what other people are going to do or what the world is going to do or what's going to happen. And somebody might hit you with your car, or, your dryer might break. Like you can't see all of this in advance, but you can control how you react to it. And you can control how you allow it to impact you and your day and your ability to continue on the path and stay doing what you need to be doing that day. And more importantly, after the fact, how do you react to yourself and to your situation if you're thrown off and you're not able to stick to your plan for the day? So for example, surgery, right? I had this surgery on my mouth, which I knew was coming. My doctor, it was like a specialist that had to do it. Some fancy tooth man doctor, It was from something that happened when I got braces done. We didn't know braces done when I was a teenager, like a preteen. And we didn't even know that there was a problem until recently and blah, blah, blah. Right. But it needed to be addressed. And so we're getting that done. And I knew the surgery was happening. The week before the surgery, was super sick and it took me about, I guess it was maybe 2 weeks before. So it took me about 2 weeks to get, I don't know what the hell's going on out there. It took me about 2 weeks to get, feeling back to normal. And I had missed some work and whatever. And I was doing really good about not stressing myself out because I am my own boss, right? So I make my own rules, and certain clients expect certain things from me, obviously, but I don't ever let them down. Like, that's just the thing about me. And I have to remind myself of that. Like, fact or fiction, do you not provide what you say you're going to provide ever? No, that's not who I am. It's not what happens. Am I allowed, though, to have a moment where I'm not 100% on? Yes. That's the part where I'm like, it's hard, and you have to work on being how you're treating yourself in those moments where you do have to go with the flow more and acknowledge that I can't control all of these things that happen or how it may have affected my ability to focus on certain things. this week, which may have then put me behind. Hi, we're humans. Human beings. We are not robots. We are not perfect. No one is. As much as I fancy myself to be Wonder Woman, y'all, and in some ways I am not always. And neither are you. And the sooner that you accept that, the more powerful you become. And so it's funny because there's this, hi, we're live on the interwebs, right? And anybody who's watching all of this, God love you. Put a comment if you're still here, or if you're watching the replay, say something so I know you're here. And I understand, I want to know that you guys are watching and that you're getting it and that you're giving a shit about what I'm saying. That's important. But if you're not able to recognize this part of yourself, how can you keep yourself from going crazy? Do you understand what I'm saying? We are so mean to ourselves. Your number one worst critic is you. Your number one worst critic is you. And if the world happens a certain way and you're not able to do a thing, here's what most of us do. We beat ourselves up internally because we think we're, oh my God, I'm such a shithead, or I'm a loser, I'm behind, blah, blah, blah. Everyone hates me, everybody's mad. All of these different kinds of thoughts come through most people. The other part of it is it's then we just don't tell anyone. Because we think we're going to beat ourselves up about it, right? But then we don't tell anybody else. So we're silently battling this issue. And anybody who actually might be expecting something from us doesn't get communication from us about it. So they don't know that we're in that situation where typically if you would just communicate it with them, they wouldn't even care. It wouldn't even be a big deal. Or maybe it's something that would take them 3 minutes to do that you really realistically don't have space for another 3 days because you're behind on this other stuff because life happened. But people wait till the last minute and they communicate after the fact instead of in the fact. And that's what creates problems. That's what creates more grief and more distrust and more lack of confidence in ourselves and more of that mean drill sergeant voice inside of your head that's telling you you're not good enough. Instead of owning situations for what they are and owning your humanity for what it is, like I did this week. This surgery was supposed to be something that possibly caused me to be out for the afternoon, maybe, right? But even then, the doctor's like, it's not a big deal. You might just feel a little not great because it was really, really painful, really, really painful. But you should be fine, whatever. Weeks that I was out, or the time I was sick or whatever, all of these things, very difficult, right? Very difficult. But what can I do about that other than communicate with anyone who expected something of me on those days? Because let me tell you something. If I didn't let myself flow in the flow in those moments because I lived a life where I didn't for a really long time, the physical and emotional and mental ailments that come from that kind of pressure you put on yourselves, it's not worth it. It will never be worth it. I would wind up in the hospital. I'm not even kidding you. That's extreme, yeah, but it's what fucking happened to me, right? So what I'm telling you this for is also what I was going to say, and I got distracted by myself here, was the interwebs have this great thing where they're like, oh, do it this way. You have to do it this way. This is the right way. You're making excuses if you say those things, like the things that I'm saying right now. I can't even tell you how many people might listen to this and be like, yeah, those sound like a bunch of fucking excuses. I'm gonna look at them and be like, or it looks like freaking life. And you set yourself up for failure over and over and over and over again because you create unrealistic expectations and unrealistic timeframes that you and no one else could actually meet. Because this is what, and it's that's what the world is telling you to do. And it's why they do that? They want to keep you in this cycle of constantly needing more of an adrenaline or dopamine hit from whomever it is and spend more money with them or watch their shit every day or whatever it is so that you continuously need them, instead of telling you what you need to do is take a fucking breath and look at shit in a very realistic fashion. Nobody talks about that. And it just pisses me off. It has for years because it's dude, I get more done than anyone I know. maybe outside of Tony. Tony is an extremely, but he's kind of like a weird behemoth of a human. But even then, if he had the focus that I did and like the work brain that I do, he would get done 3 times more than me. But he has ADD like a mofo, and that's not who he is. So he can get more done physically than anyone I've ever known. Like literally, he's like a machine. But then he gets knocked down for a few days sometimes, like, so these are consequences. And then he feels like shit about it. It's like, dude, you did this to yourself. So instead, just accept that that's the result of the way that you've chosen to behave some days. And then that's your cycle, right? And that's something that you're choosing. Where in my world, what I do instead is I create this space where it's like, I'm very aware of what I'm choosing, even in the times when I'm not the one who's necessarily making the choice, because my head body does it for me, unfortunately. But like, that's not unreal. So when people are like, those sound like excuses, I look at them and like, you sound like someone who has no idea the depth of what an excuse actually fucking is. You're just saying something for the sake of talking. Like, if that's what somebody throws at you when you're telling them about what's standing in your way, that's not someone you should be learning from, FYI. If you're like, here are the things that happened that prevented this and this from going on, and they're like, you're telling them, and you're of course like upset or annoyed or frustrated about it. So like, duh, there's emotion behind it, right? If somebody says to you, well, that sounds like an excuse to me, I'd be like, okay. And we're going somewhere else to speak about our shit, because that is just somebody whose brain is not capable of comprehending that maybe that's just your life. And so instead, you need to be able, as a coach, as a consultant, as a mentor, you need to be able to ask the right questions to help someone find the clarity in this space for them to find their flow and identify maybe what that thing really is, what could be stopping it. Maybe it just is that they're not being realistic about the timeframes that they have actually available. I can't even tell you how many times I've sat down with somebody and they've been like, Jamie, I should be doing more. 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 And then I set these schedules, and these schedules are so beautiful. And this is so perfect. And this is how I planned out my day. And I'm not getting more done. Hi, I've done this. Speaking from experience. And no one helped me with this but me. And I'm grateful that I learned from so many various people and was able to like dissect this into a thing that works. But so what I did in that was I look at people and I say, okay, let's be real about your responsibilities. Perfect. So you're going to work from 9 to 4 or 9 to 3. Okay. How long does it take you to get to work? Oh, I got to leave my house at like 8. Okay, cool. So 8 o'clock. How long does it take you to get home? Well, I pick my kids up on my way home. So if I'm leaving work at 3, I don't get home until 4:30. I'm like, okay, cool. And then what do you do? I have to do this. I have to go I have to, whatever it is, right? We have all these other things. It's like, okay, cool. Real talk. So what time frame? So what I have people do is fill them in with color, like block out that stuff. I call it block scheduling. And then you can actually look at this space, like, and then you put in when you wake up, like you're getting ready, eating routine. And then like when you go to bed, or if you have kids, like when you're putting your kids to bed. And then you can see your open spaces. And those are your spaces of available time. Nobody wants to look at that because most people are annoyed by it because it's not that much time. So what you want to focus on instead, what you want to focus on instead is, how do I get really good at using that time really freaking wisely? How do I get really good at focusing in on certain things so that I can make the most of the 2 hours that I actually have available during the day to work on that thing, right? Because people are putting forth to themselves 14 hours worth of work in a week. They only have 6 hours of available time. But then they're beating themselves up for not doing enough and not being enough. So then what happens? We look at, what can we delegate? What can we put together in different ways so that it works out faster and you're doing it faster? What makes the most sense to do in the evenings or in the mornings? Like how do you feel during the day? What prevents you from getting a lot of that thing done that you're trying to get done? And that's when we maneuver it into places that might make more sense. Do you maybe ask somebody to pick your kids up on that one day so that you have a 4-hour window in that evening instead of a 2-hour window, at least once a week? And then that one time a week you focus in and you do blah, blah, blah. Like, that's how you realistically start to get more done and build what you want to build. And you find blocks of time that you can put towards the thing. Does this make sense? Because the truth is that none of those things are fucking excuses. You have to pick up your kids. Like, some people want to make you feel bad about the things that you need to do with your life and do with your time, like your responsibilities. But then you're also bad if you don't pay attention to your responsibilities. There's one thing that I don't enjoy, it's pretty fucking high on my list of things that I don't like about humans, some humans, is when they don't handle their own responsibilities. It's pretty high on my list. Because, does it suck? Absolutely, sometimes. But who else is going to do it? Nobody. Your responsibilities are your responsibilities. Are your responsibilities, like your choices, right? But if you choose not to, you can't be mad about the result. This is what I tell people. If you choose not to take action to change the result, you're choosing the result. Like, you can't be mad about that. It is what it is. That's your choice, right? None of this is fun, but what it is the truth. And this is how you find your flow. And so the more you can learn to look at some things in a more realistic fashion and allow the flow to exist where it needs to, and focus and buckle down on the places that you can, that's how you create a life that's different than anybody else's. You also have to shift the mindset. Oh, I have to do this. I can't believe I have to do all of these things. I just threw that. I can't believe I have to do all of these things. Oh, so hard. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, you know what? Here's the truth. We all have our moments. I have my moments where I'm like, this is overwhelming. This fucking blows. I don't want to do any of these things. Then about 14 seconds later, I'm like, well, this is the life you've chosen. Do you want this life? Yes or no? The answer is yes. So then I deal with what I need to deal with. Sometimes that's my own thoughts and feelings of me being like, hi, you need to go sit down and you will do this tomorrow. Send messages that feel uncomfortable that you don't want to send to tell people, hey, this is what's going on. I'll get that to you tomorrow. I'm signing off for the day or whatever. You don't even need to tell them what's going on, but you can just update them. Hey, just checking in. This is what's going on. I'll get this to you tomorrow. And then you go take your space if you need to take your space, if that's the thing that you need to do, right? So it's that can be the thing, or it can be that I need to freaking suck it up and sit in this chair for 2 hours with my headphones in on, here's a trick. Put your headphones in on a punk rock song on repeat. One of my favorite punk rock songs, I put that bitch on repeat because after the first time, your brain doesn't even pay attention anymore to the song. And you're just in hyper focus zone. And maybe that's what you need to do for 2 hours, crank it out, even though it sucks, get it done and then be over it. But instead, our brain creates this thing and we're telling these excuses. And I don't want to be an excuse maker and a loser and a this and a that. And then what happens is you're spending all of your energy on that thought process. And then that stuff gets piled up. And you never actually do anything different with any of it. Sound familiar? It sounds familiar because we've all done it. We all do it. We're human beings and this happens, whether you want to admit it or not. That's what's going down, right? So the whole idea and topic of the conversation really here is always for me, it's always perspective. It's always permission slips. It's always hey, let's look at it a little bit differently, and how going with the flow when controlling is your comfort is something that really will set you free. It really will set you free. And it requires a lot of conversations with yourself. So if you're not comfortable with talking to yourself all day, get comfortable with it because it's what happens. It is a key component. A key component to shifting your headspace. People ask me all the time, how do I rewrite or reset up my thought processes? How do I start to look at this differently? How do I start to let myself have more if I feel like I've never had it before. Maybe it feels a little out of my reach. And it's like, dude, I'll tell you what, best way to do that is by rewriting the story, by talking to yourself differently, correcting the statement when you say, oh, I can't have that. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, that's not for me. Oh, this, you have to rewrite that story every time you catch yourself. I call it babysitting your thoughts. You just start babysitting your thoughts and saying, oh, nope, that's not my truth. That's not real. What's fact or fiction? What do I want? Nope, I want this instead. So then you rewrite the statement and you say it differently in your head. The other thing, the biggest for me is catching, or a couple of them is catching the words that come out of your mouth. If you're constantly bitching, complaining, joining in on grumbly conversations and things like that, catch yourself. If you're using negative language, you catch yourself and stop. Because a lot of times in the world, unfortunately, people commiserate with one another. It's something that we do, especially in America, that like apparently it's like the cool fucking kids club. Like the cool kids club is, oh, well, you're bitching about that. Well, let me bitch about my thing. Even if you don't even feel that badly about it, like it's just like a thing. It's just ridiculous. Just don't engage in those conversations. It's not high vibe. It's not going to get your mind into the place that you want it to be. Because let me tell you what, your parts of like the back voice, subconscious, whatever of your mind doesn't know the difference between your bullshitting, your gossiping, and the truth. So you have to be careful, especially of the way that you're talking to yourself and about yourself. But the energy behind it really does make a difference. And the other key thing is journaling. For me, I write my reality. There's also a podcast episode about this now that I think about it. We're just going to link all 3 of those podcast episodes below for you. Because they are really good. Writing your reality is a way of rewriting the storyline in your head. So for me, I could go back, and I actually do in that podcast, I go back and read from a journal when I first learned this methodology, which was in 2016, maybe, where I wrote a bunch of things that were absolutely not my reality. And they felt really uncomfortable, but they were things I wanted. Right. And by doing that, you write about what you want your life to look like. And by doing that, it starts to rewrite in your mind as something that might be possible. It starts to feel a little less awkward and a little less this and a little less like you're like, oh, I could really have that. It's like you rewrite the narrative of what's possible for yourself. And you do it every day until you'll like just laugh, because then it starts happening. You know, there's a big magic involved in writing down what you want and believing it, and then going out into the world and just doing your normal work and showing up and being a constructive member of society and, you know, working on yourself. Those 2 things in combination bring you what you're asking for always. They really, really do. If it's really what you want. That's the other part. If it's really what you want. So, we do have a journaling guide actually also. If you're not familiar with journaling, you're not sure where to start, I have a journaling guide that gives you some prompts and things like that that can kind of help get you started, and that we'll link that below too. So friends, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today. Usually my coaching calls or my training calls like this are about an hour long. Sometimes they still will be, but I'm going to try, for the sake of the internet, the live internet, to get them a little bit shorter if I can. And yeah, if anything, if you have questions, for those of you watching the replay, obviously let me know what you think. Anybody who watched live, let me know what you think. If you're excited about these, if this conversation was good, if it, you know, any nuggets that you have, I would love that. As we move forward, I might do some like giveaways and stuff as we, you know, move forward and get the viewers up a bit. So that would be really cool. Operation Do, the previous thing, where all of those training videos are. So it's about 4 years worth of videos, a little less than 400 videos. It is going to be listed as a library that you can have. You can buy it right now if you want. It's a library of all of those. It's like self-led coaching. For $555 is the price point for that. So if that's ever something you wanted, where you wanted more of these videos than just once a week, and you wanted to be able to search topics, it's all very, very lined out beautifully in a library, and you can search whatever topics you want. We've covered literally everything from finance to relationships to health, all the areas of health, to all areas of finance, mindsets, playing, budgeting, all of these things. Just so many things, business, family, all this stuff, so much mindset. If you ever wanted to look into that, that's there too. But otherwise, I'll be back here next Thursday. And if you have not already, please make sure you hit the little bell to subscribe. I don't know where it is, somewhere, to subscribe to the channel. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and comment below your favorite part or something so that we can continue giving you exactly what you're looking for. Thank you for being here. Go out into the world, do good things, be a good human. And until next week, I will see you later.